What comes to your mind when you think of armoured trains? One of those big, armed convoys used by the Soviets, or perhaps those cars that were just a load of sheet metal covering a big cannon used in the US Civil War. There have been many designs used throughout the years, but one armoured train stands out among the rest, not because of its military history or its superior firepower, but because it was in dire need of a haircut. By 1887, Natal Government Railways was expanding and in need of more powerful engines to keep the railway running. The engines operating at the time were primarily 060s, 460s and Moguls, all built in England, but it was felt that something more powerful was needed. Designs for a 282 locomotive were drawn up by Locomotive Superintendent William Milne for the railway, and construction of it began in 1888 at the Durban workshops. What made this engine special was it was not only one of the first few locomotives in the world to have 8 driving wheels, but was also the first engine to be built in South Africa. It was also the first tender engine on the railway too, being the very unusual combination of both tender and tank engine. Its sandboxes were mounted on top of its boiler, it had 2 different types of safety valves, Stephenson valve gear, vacuum brakes, 3¼ foot driving wheels, and a total weight of 50 long tons. After a trial run in August 1888, the engine was officially numbered 48 and named Havelock after Sir Arthur Havelock, then governor of the colony of Natal. After a few more trials, Havelock was officially put to work in January 1889, primarily running services between Durban and Cato Ridge. Being the first and only engine on the line actually built in South Africa, the engine was seen as the pride of the railway and used by the railway for publicity, attending press events and the opening of several new lines. Very soon, bigger and more powerful engines started working on the line, and Havelock quickly found itself on secondary duties. It was put to work on branch lines, being converted to a 462 Pacific wheel arrangement to help it negotiate the tighter bends. Havelock's career, however, wasn't just one of publicity, being a regular worker on the railway and eventually serving in the Second Boer War. At the start of the war, most locomotives on the line were fitted with armour plating to protect important components from bullets. But for whatever reason, be it lack of metal or not wanting to modify the engine too much, Havelock was instead given a different type of defence. 6-inch thick hemp anchor rope was taken from HMS Terrible and layered over the engine to function as armour. While maybe not as bulletproof as steel sheets, the rope would help slow down and deflect bullets while still allowing engine crews access to important components for maintenance. Havelock's bizarre appearance led to many giving it the new nickname of Hairy Mary. Despite looking more like a Commodore than a Commando, the armour seemed to work. During the war, the engine was partially derailed by Boer soldiers during an ambush. On board was then war correspondent Winston Churchill, and with his guidance and help from the soldiers aboard, the driver was able to get the engine going again and escape the ambush relatively unscathed. Once the war ended in 1902, the rope armour was removed. Havelock kept working for a few more years, but by 1905, with the introduction of the Class Ds, Cs and Es, the workloads were simply too much for it to keep up with, and so Havelock was withdrawn and scrapped that year. It's quite a shame really. Not only was Havelock the first engine to be built in South Africa, but it also proved that 8 driving wheel designs were not only possible, but viable too, leading to the creation of the Class D tank engines that went on to replace it, and the construction of many other 8 driving wheeled engines in the future. A pretty good track record, especially for a narrow gauge engine known for looking like a mop. Subscribe for more.